Guys, this is a shocking take. No one has made it yet. I'm the very first person to tell you this. The election is a toss up. Yep, absolutely the first time you've heard that. But in all seriousness, it's pretty agreed upon that this is a pretty competitive election, something that, at least on the polling level, is not something we've been used to saying for a while. In 2016, the polls were relatively off, predicting Hillary Clinton would win a relatively decent victory, and instead it was Donald Trump who shocked the entire world by winning. Then in 2020, the polls predicted Joe Biden would win a rather strong victory. Um, the average polling prediction in this one showed a victory that was just barely under Obama's 2008 map. And while he would win the election, it was much closer than anticipated, with him winning a shockingly narrow victory, and a combined roughly 60,000 votes in three states is what kept Donald Trump from a second term. This time, however, it's much different. With a month to go in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up about 5 points in the national average, and in 2020, Joe Biden was 8 points up. Mind you, one of them won the election and the other lost. This time around, the race is statistically tied nationally, and in swing state polling, it's arguably a better story for Trump. If the polling averages hold up, Kamala Harris will receive 276 electoral votes, and Donald Trump will receive 262. Now, this of course makes her the winner of the election, but if this is the polling average map, what that indicates is that this is quite literally anyone's game, because the polls have a margin of error. I'm mostly talking about the three Rust Belt states, which Trump was down considerably in the polls in 2016 and won them. And in 2020, he was down even more than he had been in 2016, and he just barely lost them. So if the polls um, are accurate about those being super close, and they are, what that indicates is that Trump could very well be just a normal polling error behind a clear victory this time, like he was in 2016. So there's a few reasons why I feel the election is so close at this current moment with a month to go, and those are what I want to get into in this video. So the first and kind of obvious reason is that America is just more partisan right now than it's ever been before. It is pretty much just the case that there's no crossover support for any candidate from a political party. Um, in 2020, Trump got about 95% of Republicans, and Joe Biden got 95% of Democrats. Of course, this is how they vote. It is their parties. It doesn't matter what both sides want to say about how they have specific key uh celebrity politicians from the opposite party supporting them. None of that is true. Democrats are going to vote Democrat and Republicans are going to vote Republican, and people are just more motivated because they hate the other side at this point. Like, people are also significantly less likely to be friends with people who are in the opposite party at this moment. And for most Americans, it's just the case that voting for a political party is like rooting for their sports team, and no matter what, they're going to show up to vote. So that's what's making it be a close race, because you just have two parties in this country, and Americans are clearly divided on that. The second reason why this election is close is that Donald Trump is more popular now than he was in 2020 and in 2016. Now, in 2016, Trump's favorability rating was in the 30s. In fact, one of the things that saved him was that Hillary Clinton, his opponent, was also relatively unpopular, but he was always more unpopular than her. I mean, I think his average in 2016 was, on the day of the election, his favorability rating was about 38%, and his unfavorability rating was in the 60s. And of course, he barely won that election. Then in 2020, his favorability rating was either around where it was or it had gone a little bit up to the low 40s. Now, Trump's favorability rating is in the mid 40s, which is a lot better than it was in either of the two election cycles. I mean, he's gone from being negative 20, 25 to negative 10 on his worst days, but honestly, it's probably negative 8 or 9 net favorability, which has helped him, considering that Kamala Harris, her favorability rating is at what looks like a break even or maybe negative 1. And the third reason why this election is close is non-white voters are less democratic than they used to be. And non-white voters who identify as conservative, who have typically voted Democrat anyways, are now becoming more likely to vote Republican. This is primarily the case among Hispanic Americans who identify as conservative, but it's also starting to become the case among younger black voters who identify as conservative, primarily younger black men. Now, if these gains were the only trends in the country that were constant, it would almost sound like this is just a clear advantage for Republicans, right? Well, the fourth reason as to why this is close is one that acts as a net positive for Democrats. White women, primarily white college educated women, have become more Democrat leaning as time has gone on. This kind of started to happen during the Trump presidency, but Roe v. Wade getting overturned kicked the accelerator on this one. Or I think it's called you pound the accelerator on this. You stomp the accelerator. You know what I mean. They became more democratic because of their dislike of Trump and also Roe v. Wade getting overturned. And I think you're going to see in November that trend is not going to stop. I think that trend is becoming way more prevalent. And that's kind of kept the gains Republicans have made from overshadowing Democrats in the country. But again, like I said, it keeps the race close. And finally, a reason that's kind of underrated, but will probably be something that'll be a key divide in future elections. The fifth and final reason that this election is relatively close is the gender gap. And it's just a case that women are more likely to vote for Kamala Harris and men are more likely to vote for Donald Trump. This has been the case for elections for a while now, but it's become more and more common now. And the reason why this gap has gotten a lot wider is because young voters are increasingly divided on this. If you look at Gen Z, there is a 50-point gender gap in this election. 50-point gender gap. Now, there's a few reasons for this. I don't really want to get too much into this because you could explain for an hour why this is happening, but clearly a top reason is Roe v. Wade made younger women a lot more likely to vote Democrat, and younger men, Democrats, for relatively obvious reasons, have done a terrible job at reaching out to. There is a lot of, I feel like there is just a lot of issues that both parties have done to the respective gender, um, to lose favorability among the respective gender that is less likely to support them as time has gone on. But yeah, the gender gap is a huge reason. I mean, I'm really ready to look at the exit polls in November and see that younger males and younger females voted so far apart. And that'll be an interesting thing to look into as time has gone on. But nonetheless, these five reasons are why this election is super close. And I'm going to be honest, I feel like we're nearing the point where how the polls look and how everything is looking so far, I think that's all going to maintain. So that's why the election is close. Anyone could win this. And that's the video.